welcome to today's webinar, everyone. We're going to talk about getting started with open resources in just a few minutes, but I want to welcome everybody first and just share a few housekeeping items. My name is Mary Carnahan, and I am the eLearning Resource Specialist with the Department of Education, and part of my job is to produce these webinars, so we're really excited that you have joined us today for this webinar. If you can hear my voice, you've connected to the audio. I have set all of the lines to be muted. Please keep your line muted. That way we won't have any background noise that would be distracting. We do have the chat box open. I see that a lot of you have introduced yourselves, and we really appreciate that. That's good to help you all connect to each other, but also for Molly when she starts talking about this topic today, she has an idea of who the audience is, so that's awesome. That's helpful to her. So use that chat box to ask questions of Molly as we go through the call, or to share ideas of your own with other participants. That we'll be watching those questions as we go throughout the call and answer them as they come in, or if we miss anything, we'll make sure we get to it before we end today. I am recording this webinar, so if for some reason you have to leave early or you want to go back and review it, or if you want to suggest it to a coworker, that will be online likely by mid-next week. We have a YouTube channel that where we post all of those webinars, so that is where those will be, and I tweet those out. I'll see if I can share the link throughout the call. If not, I will get that to you, and it's linked from our webpage too, from the eLearning Lab section of our webpage. Also, I will be sending out PGPs for those of you who are participating in this live call. I'll send those out in the next day or two, so you can look for that email from me. And this webinar is part of the professional development opportunities that we offer. We do try to do 1 or 2 webinars a month, depending on what's going on that month. We are working on a coding webinar for December 4th. That is actually Hour of Code week, so we are working on that. More details and registration to come on that. And then we'll be working on scheduling webinars for second semester. Another way that we like to share professional development is through Twitter. So constantly, when you're using Twitter, make sure you're using the INELearn hashtag to connect to other educators, and also consider participating in the INELearn Twitter chats. Those are on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. This week's topic is classroom trick-or-treat. So our moderator, Tiffany Koppel, you'll walk away with some ed tech tricks and treats from that webinar. So consider doing that. And that's a great Twitter chat to get started with. It's pretty low stress. It's not really fast, so you can keep up with it if you're new to Twitter chats. Another way that we provide professional development is through our book club. We are actually finishing up our fall book club. We've got 2 weeks left in that. We're reading Instant Relevance by Dennis Sheeran, but we will be starting a book club in the spring, likely in February or March. So if that's something that you're interested in, be watching our website and Twitter for details on our next book selection and when that will start. That's a great way to get professional development when it's convenient for you. That's done through a blog, so you can participate whenever it's convenient for you, and a great way to get some PGPs to renew your license. We do 2 PGPs per week of the book club, so just watch for that if that's something that you're interested in. And now I'm going to turn the line over to Molly Yoel. She's our digital content coordinator, and she'll share with you all things open education resources.
Thanks, Mary. Can you guys
Thanks,
hear me
Molly.
okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if you hear a 6-year-old run in loudly, in the next half an hour, please just excuse that. Just my forewarning. But I am Molly Yole, and I do work with the Office of eLearning as the digital content coordinator, and have the opportunity to be the Open Education Resources lead for the state and for the Go Open initiative, and get to work kind of at a state level, but then at a national level as well, with this OER movement. And I'm super excited to share with you guys um, some ins and outs of OER and the Go Open movement and what that looks like in Indiana and beyond, and hopefully give you some insight into some future professional development opportunities around OER and digital instructional materials that will be beneficial to not only you in your role, but hopefully your colleagues, and you'll share with them as well. So, Mary, you can go ahead and move on. So I'll just start off by saying the reason that I love the OER movement or the Go Open movement, which are kind of hand in hand, I'll speak to that in a little bit, is because the culture that's behind it, it's all about sharing and collaboration. It's all about teachers helping teachers. And so I'm hopeful that as you learn more about OER, you will really appreciate the culture that is behind it. So to be technical for a moment, open education resources, like it says, teaching, learning, and research resources that reside in the public domain or have been released under a license that allows for their free use, reuse, modification, and sharing with others. When people talk about free resources, they often kind of interchange free with open, and that's not always the case. And so I really like to stress to teachers that free means that you can access or link to someone's original source. So in my classroom, I could have a hyperdoc that I'm sharing with my students, and I could link out to a YouTube video, or I could link out to an online game, or an academic research article. And I'm sending my students to that original source, and they're allowed to consume it, if you will. But I can't do anything else with that source. I can go and visit that source, I can consume that source, and I can send my students to that original source to consume it. But beyond that, our hands are really tied if we are respecting the boundaries of copyright law. What open means is that not only is it free, so not only can I visit that resource or link my students out to visit that resource, but as a teacher or as a student, I have access to use it, but I can also reuse it. I can modify it, and then I can share it back out in a new version. So I always like to try to distinguish. We have paid digital instructional materials, we have free digital instructional materials, and then we have open digital instructional materials, which open allows for that use, reuse, modification, and that sharing with others. So if you think of like an old school mixtape, right? A lot of us were breaking copyright, right? When we were recording our cassette players on like the top 9 at 9 and compiling our own cassette tape of our favorite songs, right? We were doing that illegally and not within the bounds of copyright law. Now, if that song would have had a Creative Commons license on it and I was able to remix it and reuse it like I was doing, right, then I would have been respecting the request of the owner of that song, and I would have, been within the bounds of my rights. So before we move on, because that's usually what catches people, I'll just wait for 20 seconds and see if anyone has a question in the chat box regarding paid versus free versus open. Okay. Well, I will move on as to not waste much time. But I don't think we're going to take up the whole hour. So we do have plenty of time for question and answers. If you guys have those, and yes, as Mary said, make sure you select the drop down to everyone, not just to the presenter, Mary, if you are sending a question. So So, like I said, when you are talking about OER, please make sure that your teachers and your colleagues and your friends know the difference between free and open, and that we all know our usage rights when we are accessing digital instruction materials online. All right, Mary, you can move on to the next slide. All right. So when I talk about OER and when I talk about Go Open, they do go hand in hand because the Go Open movement that was started by the US DOE, Office of Educational Technology, is all about the promotion of OER. So they are interchangeable in a lot of people's vocabulary. So the Go Open movement was started a few years ago, and Indiana actually joined the Go Open movement in February of 2016. And what that meant as a state was that as an office, we have to provide a state website that talks about our OER journey and our Go Open journey. We have to provide resources and professional learning around it. We have to participate in a collaborative community of other Go Open states across the country. And a few other things like that. So as a state, we are holding our end of the bargain, and we are participating at a national level and offering support around the Go Open movement. And one of those ways is also a Go Open Summit that we are collaborating with Center Grove on, and we are hosting our third annual Go Open Summit, and I will speak to that towards the end of the webinar. So we're really trying to just spread the word about what Go Open is and what the OER movement is all about. And, the more districts that we can get on board, the better everyone's going to be. Because like I said, the culture behind the Go Open movement is that collaborative and sharing nature. So most districts want to know, why should I go open, and what does that commitment look like for me as a district? So when the US DOE started the Go Open movement, the basis for it was that they wanted all students, regardless of their zip code, to have access to quality digital instructional materials. They wanted to make sure that, even if their district wasn't adopting new textbooks or investing in the shiniest new devices, that whether in a digital format or a print format, their students had access to quality materials. Because it's not fair, right, that the district down the road, their students have access to great content and updated resources, and the school next door doesn't, because we want all students to have the opportunity to learn and have access to relevant current content. So as a district, obviously, we can help increase equity across the board. We can allow our students to have access to relevant and high quality content, like I said. This is my favorite, teacher empowerment and freedom. So many districts have devices in their students' hands. They have put a halt on traditional textbook adoption, and a lot of teachers are just kind of left to fill in the blanks, if you will, as to what content and materials to be using in their classroom, because they might be on a continued use kind of rotation. They aren't necessarily given funds to pay for new content, whether kind of traditional or online resources. And so they're doing their best to vet and to create and to curate digital instructional materials for their students. We all know that that's very time consuming and it's a lot of work. And so although it is time consuming and a lot of work, like I said, the Go Open movement is all about collaboration and sharing. And so the more people that are doing the work and they're sharing their work, the more that we all benefit from that. And as a classroom teacher myself, there's nothing that I appreciate more than having the freedom to choose the best digital instructional materials for my students at that time. Because my classes change every semester and I get a new group of kids and every class period looks different. And so what works really well for one class doesn't work really well for another. And so I love the fact that Indiana is a local control state, and I love the fact that we do have the freedom to curate and create a lot of our digital instruction materials to use for our students. And so instead of looking at the chore, if you will, of curating and creating our own content, I think we should look at it as an opportunity, and just appreciate the freedom in that. And then, become part of that culture so that we can learn from others that are doing the same thing. Um, Here's the one that gets a lot of district administrators' attention, potentially save money, and we're going to talk more on that in a few minutes. And then the collaborative part, like I said, share and love the expertise. Um, with hopes of not offending anyone who is a big fan of like the teacher pay teachers, that often comes up when talking to teachers about the Go Open movement and the OER culture. We're kind of doing the opposite of what the teachers pay teachers is doing, because I hate that I would want a colleague to have to pay for something that I created and vice versa. And so if you're not familiar with Teachers Give Teachers, you should definitely check that out. It's kind of the ideology behind that is give one, take one, and we're all in this together. So I always like to share the Teachers Give Teachers. Mary, you can go on. All right. So let's say that you're interested in learning more about open educational resources. You go to some events that we're having and you're like, yeah, our district can do this. We can commit to becoming a Go Open district because Indiana is a Go Open state. But the more Go Open districts we have officially joined the movement through the USDOE, the more we can work together and kind of get on the same page. And so if you look on the right-hand side, we do have 5 Indiana districts that have committed at the Go Open level with the USDOE and who are working on getting their one, replacing their one textbook with OER within a year. And so to commit to becoming a Go Open district, there's just a few things you have to do. Like mentioned, you identify a district team, which would be composed of, a district admin, such as a curriculum director, an instructional coach, maybe it's your superintendent, depending on the size of your school, and the positions that you have. You commit to replace at least one textbook with OER within a year. And I bet that you have a lot of teachers that are doing that already with free resources, but not always with open resources. And so that's where we really have to make sure teachers can distinguish the difference between free and OER. And then document and share your implementation process, because there's other districts that are going to fall behind you that would love to learn from your successes and your hurdles. I've included on the presentation the Go Open District Launch Packet the USD has put together, and it really lays out all the steps that you need to take as a district, from forming your team all the way to sharing out your story. And so that's definitely a great resource there if you're interested. Any questions? I'm going to check the chat box about that. Yeah, and Mary did share again the link to the presentation so you can have these. East Noble has been a Go Open district for a while now, as long as HSE and MSD Warren. Noblesville, fairly, they've been doing this for a little bit now, and then MSD of Southwest Allen has just recently joined us. And so please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me to ask for contacts at these districts if you don't know anyone there, or just get online and find their curriculum director and say, hey, tell me more about your Go Open movement and how you got this started in your district. Because that is the point behind all of this, is that we're learning and we're sharing together. And so I can guarantee that those districts are going to be super excited to share how they got started, and allow you to learn from them and with them. All right, Mayor. Okay, so here's where I like to address some myths of OER. So let's say as a district, you decide to join the Go Open movement, and your teachers are going to replace one traditional textbook with all open education resources, whether that be a semester course or a year-long course, maybe for a grade level, like at the elementary level. So these are the myths that I often, these are the statements, I guess, that I often hear. And so let's just talk about these. Myth number 1, this is the big one: the district will save money because OER is free. So yes, OER is free. OER is not only free, but it is accessible for people to modify and remix and share out. Um, but just because something is free, right? Think like free like a puppy. So when I get a puppy, right, I might get it for free, but that puppy's going to cost me a lot of money because I'm going to have to take that puppy to the vet and I'm going to have to get that puppy shots and I'm going to have to feed that puppy. And some puppies live for 15 years. And it's definitely a commitment. So think of it like a puppy. Yes, you will save money because you are not buying your textbooks anymore. Let's say you replace just one course and the textbooks that you would normally adopt, you save all that money on the front end. But you really don't save that money. You really should reallocate that money. And so I would what I would hate is for a district to sign on and say, yes, we're going to replace a traditional textbook with OER, and then they just kind of leave their teachers um, hanging in the wind, if you will, to do it on their own. And I know you guys wouldn't do that intentionally. So make sure that when you do start to transition from traditional materials, whether it's free or open, either one, that you are supporting your teachers as they're making that transition and as they're kind of traveling down that path as they transition from print to digital. You need to take that money and you need to reallocate it to your teachers. You need to invest in your teachers, and eventually you may see um, a cost, a save, I guess, a savings cost in um, in your budget, I guess. But you need to reallocate your money. You need to provide ongoing PD for your teachers. You need to pay for subs. You need to bring them in the summer, and if that requires giving them, a stipend for their time, you need to bring in professionals that can train them. If you don't have anyone at your district that can do a train the trainer model, and really give them support around the curation and the creation process. So your teachers need to know and become experts, and how to vet resources and how to create resources and how to make sure that resources are accessible for all students. They need to know all things about the Creative Commons licensing. So when they do create OER, they know which type of license to put on their content that they're creating and what each license means. They need to know that if they search an OER repository and they find a resource there, that they are honoring the Creative Commons license that the creator attached to it and that they're respecting that Creative Commons license. And they need to know that they're supported. And so providing all of this professional learning is important and it's ongoing. It's something that doesn't end. So not only do on the front end do you need to provide them with professional learning around Creative Commons licensing and copyright and around accessibility and vetting for quality, but you also then need to give them time, to curate and create the content that they're going to use in their classrooms, and then have a common place in their district where they're sharing it, and hopefully a statewide place where they're sharing it as well. And we all know that things are always changing, and each semester or each school year, your students are changing and their needs and history and everything is changing. And so, it's not something that you do for a year and then you just stop and kind of wipe your hands of it and say, okay, we're done. We have, an OER textbook, a digital textbook, if you will, created, and we don't ever need to readdress that because you do, right? You're constantly going back and tweaking and adding and taking away and making things better and up to date and relevant for your students. So I don't know if there's ever a point where we can say we're finished, but I just really want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we really need to invest in our teachers if we're going to join this Go Open movement, and we're going to start investing in OER. I think we have a question. Do districts still charge textbook fee to families? Matt, I think it looks different for each district. I do know that some districts have a technology fee that they may charge, and that usually goes towards either the purchase or the rental of the devices. Some districts also have continued use of their textbooks, so they might be using a textbook that's 7 or 8 years old, for instance, that they did purchase long ago, but they charge um, a small portion to use that. And so some districts, I think, are able to take that money for that continued use and use it in different ways. I think some districts get fairly creative um, with it, while staying within the boundaries that they're allowed. Susie says, I like the idea that some shares that you invest money in your teachers. Yes, I think it's super important. And, your teachers are going to feel valued and appreciated. I think a lot of teachers really struggle with this transition from print to digital and even paid to free and open because they just don't feel like they're given the time and the space to do it or the professional support around it. I think most teachers see the value in digital instructional materials and most would appreciate the culture behind OER. They just need to be allowed, like I said, the time and space to really invest in it and um, to create and curate some really great materials for their students. But so many times they're just rushed to quickly search for something and grab it and go that I think oftentimes we're not taking the time to acknowledge whether it's copyright protected, whether it has an open license. And even if it does have an open license and they realize what they can do with that, they just don't really have the time to tweak it, for their students at that particular time and space. So giving them time, during the school year and over the summer is a really great idea. And what I've seen done really well over the years, MSD of Wayne Township several years ago um, did this really well. And say you're a Go Open district or you want to become a Go Open district and you say, okay, we're going to start with, ninth grade ELA. And that's going to be our one replacement of a textbook with OER. And so, you would bring together all of your English, your entire English department, definitely all of your ninth grade English teachers, and you would make sure that first year curriculum was aligned. So MSD of Wayne Township did it in particular subject areas, K to 12. And so before they created any content and any digital instructional materials to attach to their curriculum maps, they first aligned everything K to 12 and got all of that in place in a shareable space that everyone in the district had access to. And then they started pulling teachers out, giving them professional learning around how to curate and create, and then giving them time and space to actually curate and create those digital instructional materials and attach them to those maps in a common space where everyone could access. And it was just like a constant just flow of teachers adding stuff and taking things out and revamping each year. And so that seems like a lot, and it's very overwhelming, I think, if you look at it K to 12. But if you really just hone in on one particular subject area, maybe just in one grade level, or maybe just one semester course, then I think it's definitely more doable. Are online public schools impacted by this? Homeschoolers. Online public schools, I can't really speak to that. I mean, everyone has access to open education resources, so it's just whether or not those online public schools are taking advantage of the resources and the repositories that are living out there, and then homeschoolers and the districts involved. I would think that if a district has an open space, well, probably, I'm not sure about homeschoolers. I would think that the way I've seen most districts do it is they are having their content live in like a learning management system that their district pays for. So obviously, a homeschool student doesn't have access to an account within that learning management system because they're not an enrolled student in that district. So I wouldn't think that they would have access to that. Now, there are a multitude of OER repositories out there where parents of homeschoolers could go and access this content and these materials, and of course could create their own or take the already created OER and adapt them for their particular students at home. But most districts I've seen are housing their OER in their learning management system that they pay for, and mostly it's a closed environment. And those that are living in, say, Google Classroom, for instance, a lot of them are keeping their curriculum maps and their attached resources in like a shared Google Drive folder. And so those can be public, but I would imagine that they're just private within the district. Hope that answered your question. All right. So myth number 2 is our teachers and district do not know how to create curriculum, and if they do, it should not be shared publicly. I definitely think that goes against the whole idea behind this culture, because like I said before, and I will continue to say, is that the culture behind the Go Open movement and open educational resources is the culture of sharing. And so I think it's super important across the state and within our own districts that we are constantly elevating the great work and collaboration that our teachers are doing. Indiana has some of the most amazing teachers, and they do such great work above and beyond. I think sometimes we just forget to celebrate that, and this is a great way to elevate the work that our teachers are doing. I hate that there are so many wonderful teachers across the state doing great work and probably do create a lot of OER to use within their classrooms. And it may be that they're sharing it across the hall with their colleague, or they're sharing it within their district library, say within Canvas, but no one beyond that has access to that. And so it's a shame to me, because I bet the district down the road would love to have access to that teacher's great work and vice versa. So I think that is a myth, because if you offer your teachers the support that they need around OER, then they are going to know how to create great curriculum, especially if you have a curriculum director at your district, an instructional coach, an e-coach that's there to kind of support them along the way. And maybe you have a vetting process within your district where teachers are, sharing their content before they're publishing it, and they're getting feedback from their colleagues. And that's a great way to promote collaboration and to learn from one another. And, you do a train the trainer model, you have kind of curator leads within your buildings, if that's what works for you, and allow them time and space to support others and go into their classrooms. There's all sorts of neat things you could do. And then myth number 3, if the resources are openly licensed, they can't be high quality. That's the same with paid resources as well. I've seen a lot of paid content that isn't that great. And so I think we just need to wipe that myth clean. And there's a lot of good stuff out there, and there's a lot of junk out there. But if you offer your teachers the professional learning and the support around, how to vet for quality, then they're going to be able to distinguish what is high quality, and they're going to be able to weed out what's not. And I'm hopeful that as the OER community grows, that the good stuff will rise to the top and the bad stuff will, fall at the bottom, as it should. And I am really encouraging the teachers that I talk to, it's okay to start out as a consumer, and it's okay to start off, looking at those OER repositories and grabbing something that someone else has created and given you permission to modify, and doing that for your particular classroom. But after you get comfortable with maybe the modification, and you're familiar with what the licenses look like and what they mean, and what you want other people to be able to do with the stuff that you create, I really would encourage teachers to start creating their own content. And many of them, like I said, they're already doing that. They're just not sharing it in a public space, and they're probably not tagging it with a Creative Commons license. So other people know, hey, I can take and use this. If you have a teacher within your district that creates, let's say, a check for understanding, right, or a hyperdoc, or some form of assessment, maybe just on a Google form, unless they tag that with a Creative Commons license, even if I have access to that and I see it or they share it, if it doesn't have that Creative Commons license, I have to assume that that is copyright protected. As a creator, anything that I create up front automatically has a copyright protection put on it. I don't have to go to a copyright office. I don't have to, call someone and, tell them that I want this copyright protected. It is automatic from the second I start writing something down, whether it's on a napkin or it's on a Google Doc. A copyright kind of badge is placed on that, unless I put a Creative Commons license on top of that copyright and give other people permission, to remix and modify and adapt and reshare. So ultimately, Susie says, who determines what is high quality? Well, I think as teachers, we are the experts of our content areas. And I think depending on your district, our definition of high quality may look different. But think about when you talk to your students, depending on, I guess, their age level. When I take my students before research, and we're talking about how do I know if a resource is a good resource to use, right? In my paper, we talk about, the timeliness. We talk about the creator of it. We talk about what type of domain it comes from. We talk about looking, for incorrect information, for misspelling and errors, and for the way that it looks, and all sorts of different things to be on the lookout for to determine if something is a legitimate resource to use. I think that's where we start, right? Um, does it have accurate information? Is it timely? Has it been updated? Is it the most recent information? Is it from a credible source, right? All those things that we're looking for. But, we have a lot of districts across the state that kind of have different focuses. So you might be a PBL district. You might be a customized learning district. You might be a UDL district. And for you, your definition of quality may have a little bit different focus because you are a project-based learning district. And so not only does your content need to be credible, and it needs to come from a legitimate source, and it needs to be timely and up to date, but it also needs to have these components of project-based learning that you want in it. So I think, quality looks the same in a way for a lot of us, but then there's that separate layer that is dependent upon the district that you're living in. We actually have, and I can find it and pop it in here, but we have a suggested resource that we use on our team and that we share with our teachers that we work with that they can use. It's a checklist for quality. And so it starts with, what type of resource is this? Is this resource compatible with the devices and the programs that my students are using? Another component of quality, like I mentioned earlier, is this resource accessible to all students? So do I have a student, who has a hearing impairment or a visual impairment? Can this text be read aloud to a student depending on where I find it and what device students are accessing it on? So all those different things, take play when we're looking at what is quality. And hopefully we get to the point where it's not something we have to think about. It's just kind of automatic. And I think for those teachers who do a lot of curation and creation, they're just kind of on the ball and they know what to look for real quick. But other teachers, sometimes when they're just getting started and they're creating their own content, they really want that checklist to kind of look at, to check off, okay, it's this, it's this, it's this. And so we've created that, and I'll share that out with you guys in a few moments. But I am curious if anyone wants to share in the chat box what you as a district use to vet materials or offer to your teachers to vet materials, and what quality looks like to you. If anyone has a rubric or a checklist that they share with their teachers, I'd be really interested. There's all sorts of free ones out there that are created by really reputable organizations. We actually took ours and adapted it from Washington State, who is also an OER state, and they had a good foundation, and we just kind of added to it because it had a Creative Commons license on it, and it was open, and we were given permission to do that. So it was a beautiful thing. I didn't have to create it from scratch. Let me grab that real quick, and I'll just wait a moment to see if anybody has a rubric or a checklist that they want to add. It also brings up a really good talking point that I would be interested to know, and maybe this isn't the appropriate place for it. If districts are having this conversation, here you go, Susie. If districts are having the conversation around the vetting of materials, because what I found after talking to superintendents and different curriculum directors across the state and even the country, and some of our organizations that we're part of, because so many districts have stopped traditional textbook adoption. They're now using that money to pay for the devices. So the teachers are kind of living in this space where they might be using continued use of an old textbook. They might be curating and creating some of their own content of free and open, and then they might also have some paid online like subscriptions or something, or maybe their district pays for Brain Pop for them, or maybe they have access to a textbook online that they've paid for. So the teachers that are kind of living in that space where they don't have a primary resource, if you will, in their classroom, a core instructional material like our textbooks used to be, is anyone vetting the material that teachers are using nowadays in their classrooms? Maybe you're a district that is a Google Apps for Education district, and you're really pushing your teachers to create hyperdocs to share with your students. And so all of your materials, you're curating for your students, and maybe they're creating and curating some of it as well. Is anyone vetting that? So at the district level, when we used to adopt textbooks, right? We used to have the textbook caravans, and Indiana would put their stamp of approval that it aligned with their standards, and we'd have options to, 3 or 4 different textbook companies to choose from. And then our school board would approve it. And so it would have, the stamp of approval from the school board. If no one's doing that anymore because we're not adopting textbooks and spending all this money, what type of vetting is going on in your classrooms? And are your teachers turning anything in to be vetted from a curriculum director or a principal or anything? I'm not saying that that's the way that it should be, or that we need to have a formal process. I'm just always curious when I talk to folks across the state, who is vetting content from here on out, if teachers are kind of left just to create it on their own. You're saying, Rebecca says, I assume that someone checks curriculum materials for alignment with state standards and learning objectives. I'm sitting in the scenes. Yep. Yeah, and that's of course part of that checklist that we provide as well. Obviously, is it aligned to state standards? The one that we created talks about objectives and things like that. So of course, and I guess to me that's just a given. But again, your teachers are your content area specialists and your experts. So if no one has any comments about that, I just went on my soapbox, just for fun, I suppose. But I hope it's something that you consider at your district, and depending on the role that you play at your district, it's not necessarily something that I'm checking in on people. I just, out of my own curiosity, I'm wondering, what digital instruction materials are being vetted, and are they being vetted, just by the classroom teacher? Are they being vetted at the building level or at the district level? Are there even materials anymore that are board approved, since we are a local control state? District group, Brittany says. Oh, good. So you're a UDL district then. That's great. Yeah. And so, hopeful sounds like that, you bring your teachers in, you talk about the rubric, you talk about what quality looks like, and you give them time to work with that rubric, and you give them time to use that rubric with the additional instruction materials that they're curating and creating. That's great. All right, Mary, if you want to move on, I'm going to share some learning opportunities for folks. All right, so there's the OER district resource presentation. Mary, if you want to, can you select that, or and open that up? So this is just a quick grab and go resource that I put together for district administrators and or teachers who are looking to get started. Has some resources on the first slide to share out. There's a Champion Playbook that has a lot of great resources for districts who want to get started with in transition to the OER environment. And then CETA, which is a national organization that's made up of state educational technology leaders. They've actually created this quality content resource, and they have a whole section on OER. And there are some suggested content checklists and rubrics that you can grab from there as well, and some other resources. And then I compiled a list of OER repositories. Some of them are content specific, but most of them are just non-content specific repositories, if you will. It looks like it's not open. That's okay, Mary. They have access to the presentation, so they can link it from there. All right, the other link that I provided, the Digital Instructional Material Professional Learning Opportunities, that's a new menu offering that we have created in our office. And all of these professional learning opportunities are focused around digital instructional materials and content curation and creation. And so we have a variety of learning opportunities available. We are continuing our digital content curation workshop tour. We have 2 dates set. We actually have one in November and then another one in January, and I'm scheduling this week one for after the new year as well. So we have one central, we have one north, and I'm scheduling one down south as well. So hopefully you won't have to travel too far depending on where you're at. And that's definitely like a 101 level for teachers who are just getting started curating and creating, who are, have one hand tied to that textbook still and aren't quite ready to let go. We talk about the why behind the shift from print to digital and the value added when using digital instructional materials versus traditional textbooks. We talk about the curation process, what it means to, know your audience and know your objective, and then where to search and how to vet it, and then how to share that content. And then hopefully some work time in between. And it's just a great time usually where teachers can, be out of the classroom for a day and share with other teachers from different districts and talk about their work and maybe even collaborate on a project. It's good networking for your teachers and a good opportunity for teachers to kind of get out and be with other adults for the day. And those workshops are free, and we actually pay for the subs for those workshops. We typically will pay for up to 5 teacher subs per district. We really want to encourage multiple districts in the area to send teachers. But if you want to send a team or even a grade level to come and get some work done, then we would encourage that. Some other learning opportunities that we have, since I can't get Mary to, sorry Mary, I'll pull it up on mine and then go through. So in speaking about the open education resource culture, part of that culture is, of course, the Creative Commons and that nonprofit organization and what the Creative Commons licenses represent on those OER resources. And so we have just scheduled on March 12th, I believe. We are offering a full day workshop. We're partnering with CIESC, and we're offering a full day workshop that introduces teachers to the Creative Commons culture and highlights kind of how to navigate the world of paid, free, and open. And so we dig a little bit deeper into that. And it's going to be geared toward teachers and coaches who want to learn more about respecting copyright and how to use the licenses when creating classroom materials. So that would be a great opportunity if you're a teacher to grab some friends and go. If you're a building or district leader to, send some teacher leads who can come back and share that with your other teachers and do a train the trainer. So that's going to be on March 12th. Registration will be opening soon. Watch our website and then Twitter for that. And then I mentioned earlier that we are actually hosting our 3rd Go Open Summit. It's going to be held on January 24th, and it's going to be at Center Grove Community School Corporation, their Innovation Center. And that's in Greenwood, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. And registration is open for that, as well as our pitch to present. So maybe you're already an OER expert and you want to share your knowledge. I will post the pitch to present in the chat box, or you maybe have a colleague that you think would be really great. They're already using OER. Yes, 100%, Susie, good to send librarians to that. Yes, and if you are not utilizing your media specialists, I really encourage you to do so, because our media specialist friends are like our greatest asset in this whole movement. They are the original curators. They're trained to do this. They can be your teacher leaders as you kind of go down this path. Matt, the one up north, I believe is, I've got a lot of dates going around in my mind right now. It is already posted on our digital content curation workshop page. It is going to be January 15th, School City of Mishawaka. And that's posted. Let me put that in the chat box for you. And registration is open for that. Let me share another learning opportunity or two with you guys, and then I'll let you go if you don't have questions. So we have the Go Open Summit. We have the Creative Commons licensing workshop in March with CISE. We also, I'm waiting to hear back from Dr. Osborne at IU. We're going to do another Teaching with Primary Sources workshop, a 2-day workshop that we're going to offer in Bloomington, and that's going to be free for attendees, and we'll even help pay for subs for that. So the reason I love the Library of Congress and primary sources is because they are technically OER. They live in the public domain, and we can take and use them. And if you're familiar at all with the Teaching with Primary Sources, the TPS network, you'll know that they focus a lot on student inquiry and students asking questions and getting students really invested in content using primary sources. And so we've done a few TPS workshops in the past, but we didn't do one last year. And so I'm really excited to offer this workshop, and that will be after the first of the year as well. We're just waiting to nail down some dates when their facility is ready, but that'll be in Bloomington after the first of the year. And that would be a great one to send your media specialists to. And really, I would say all K-12 ELA teachers, social studies teachers, and even they have quite a bit for science. Not super helpful for our math teachers, but ELA and social studies especially get a lot out of those workshops. And then I already mentioned our workshop tour and a few other opportunities that are upcoming. You can check that out there as well. And that we're going to continue to add to that digital instructional material professional learning opportunities menu. So hopefully you can share that with your colleagues and share it with your district admin and let them know that there's some learning opportunities coming up. And like I said, we do try to pay for subs whenever we can. And so if cost is an issue, you can definitely reach out to me and say, hey, can we bring a group? Can you pay for the subs? The one thing I do want to say about the summit in January at Center Grove is we really encourage you to put a team together and to bring a team of up to 5 people from your district. And so if you do, like I said, you do have a curriculum director, or maybe it's your assistant superintendent who does curriculum, bring a media specialist, bring a primary classroom teacher, a secondary classroom teacher, bring an e-coach if you have that, and start forming your team, because we'll have different strands for different folks in attendance. And you can all go to different sessions and learn something and bring it back. And then, of course, take it to your district and start your OER commitment. If you're interested about the Go Open district commitment, like I said, I shared that launch packet. And then if you ever have questions, just reach out and ask. See if there's any other questions. All right. So hopefully now we're all familiar with free versus paid versus open, and we know that the foundation of open education resources and the Go Open movement is the culture of sharing and collaboration. This is a very large task at hand as we all transition from traditional textbooks to digital instruction materials, specifically OER. So the more work that we can do and share together, the better off we're all going to be. currently at the state level, we are still using Amazon Inspire to share digital instruction materials that is created through grant opportunities and through our Rockstars of Curation cohort. All you have to do to find the specific Indiana content is search hashtag, or not even hashtag, is just search keyword eLearn in the chat box in Amazon Inspire. And then there is a great list on that OER district resource presentation of OER repositories, not only Amazon Inspire, but a lot of others as well. And OER Commons is always a great place to find OER as well. And I included the link for you to register for the Go Open Summit as well. So if there's no other questions, we can close it for the day. Thank you all for joining us. And like I said, reach out if you have questions or want to know about other learning opportunities for your teachers. I'm always available to connect with admin team, with small teacher groups, either in person or virtually, if you want to, get kind of more specific with regard to content level or grade level OER and what that looks like. But definitely please promote the empowerment and the freedom for teachers in this movement, because I think it really is a win for everyone. All right. You guys have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.